Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody, and happy holidays and all that other stuff. We're festive today. We have this background going on. We're here. I'm John. I'm here with my friends Murph, as usual, and we have a special guest, Seth, over here. Sorry, you were going to say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Welcome. And today we're talking trains once again, our monthly show on the third Wednesday of every month. Before we get started, I want to mention something that is important to me, and that is our friend Sparky 107 every year for Christmas does what he calls his holiday show. I think that's what he calls it, where he's going to come on Christmas Day to his YouTube channel and do a live stream. And what's nice about it is usually he would give away a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know how much stuff he's giving away or if he's giving away stuff this time, but he will be in our chat today and he'll be posting the link to his live stream. So be sure to be looking for that. Also, we're going to have Stephen Priest later, who's going to be talking about the model manufacturing process. Before we get to all that, though, Seth and I are involved with something called the PCR's Layout Design and Operations Weekend. That's going to be happening on the weekend in between the end of the playoffs for the NFL and the Super Bowl. There's a bye week in there, and that's when we run this event. And it's all about, well, layout design and operations. And what's cool about it is this year, once again, we're doing a hybrid event, meaning it's not only going to be live, but we're also going to be sharing the clinic day, which is on the Saturday, which is February 1st, right? And it's going to be a live show coming to you from Sacramento. And so the clinic day is going to have all kinds of really cool stuff, presentations. There's a layout design challenge and stuff like that. So maybe you should talk about that for a second, Seth, and we'll move on from there.
Well, so we're it's part of a 3-day event held at the California State Railroad Museum. And one of the cool things, if you're there in person, so this is more aimed at people in Northern California, but you do get the run of the museum on Friday afternoon and Saturday as part of your registration. So, it's definitely worth the trip. And even if you've seen it before, worth another look. But the key content part is on Saturday, and we'll have 4 clinics. We'll have a panel discussion, and we'll have a design challenge and a few other things going on. And we'll see how much of that we can get in the video stream. But the idea, like many of these events, and John and I have talked about this before, is that even if you're not local, or if you are but have other commitments for the day, you can log in and participate in as much as you'd like. And we're just so pleased that, I guess going back to the 2021 Rails, Rails
that
by
was
the
this.
Day.
Yeah.
We have a lot of friends from really all over the world who have joined us on this. So, once again, you're all welcome. We'd love to keep everybody engaged. And I think we're going to have the video available for, what is it, 2 weeks?
Something like that. Yeah.
So, if you can't do it in real time, obviously you won't be able to, join in the group discussions and so forth, but you will be able to see it. But we do try to make these virtual events as close to being there as we can. And part of that is, chat streams going on while we're doing the live stream. And in between the clinics, we do open up the conference for comments and discussion. And it really feels pretty close to interacting with your neighbors in the hall.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I think that anybody with an internet connection anywhere in the world, you can go. I've posted the link in the description of this video that you're watching right now. It's bayldops.com. And I think it's definitely worth coming to. It's cheap, just like $15 or something until the beginning of the year. Then I think it goes up to 20 or something like that. And even for $20, this is very, very worthwhile. So if you have, trouble getting to things because they don't have events in your area, or maybe you want to make some new friends. The online virtual version of this event is very much worthwhile because you'll meet a lot of really cool people and learn a lot from the in-person presentations as well.
Yeah, and I see Dave has just posted the link into the chat. So
yes,
thank you very much.
Right. Thanks, Dave. Also, the other Dave, Sparky107107, has posted his link to his live stream on Christmas that I just mentioned a minute ago. So thanks for being here, Sparky, and thank you for being a ambassador of socializing in the hobby, because you create a good space for people to come to, especially on holidays like Christmas, when for some people it's a very lonely time of year. So I think it's a public service really to have your live stream, and I will endeavor to be there as well, at least for part of it. So I feel like I left you out, Murph. Is there anything that you have going on that you want to talk about?
Not really, not right now.
You're working on that wine,
I have my
though.
wine, yeah. We're going.
We have the important stuff taken care of.
That's how Murph deals with the house full of people he'd really rather not deal with. The rest of us just go hide and watch Sparky's show.
Yeah. What's funny about that is I invited him over and he brought the wine. So that's what I'm thinking is like, have to figure a way to tolerate me somehow. But anyway, I want to bring on our friend Paul Deese. Let me bring him up here, and we're going to hi, Paul. Welcome.
Hi there.
We'd like to talk about the PCR convention, which is another hybrid event, not the same as the layout design and operations weekend, but about a month later or so, month and a half, something like that. So why don't we just bring this up and
But I will say one other thing first.
Oh yeah,
Seth, I've made every SIG meet that we've had except the first one and one that was virtual, but I got to see it virtually. So I recommend people sign up. It's great whether you can do it in person or virtual.
What were your since we're on the topic, I want to ask you, Paul, since you've attended both ways, how would you contrast the two?
Well, I prefer in person because that way I can talk to people, and I've been known to talk a lot.
Okay, that's all we need from you. No.
Plus, in person, you got op sessions on Sunday,
right?
But as far as the presentations go, it's pretty much no different. You get the same presentation. Instead of asking questions in person, you ask questions virtually.
Yep.
So if you can't make it there, definitely sign in.
Yeah, honestly, for me, I prefer the presentations virtual because I can have refreshments. I really like self-guided tours. I have had more fun going around with a couple other model railroaders to visit various people's layouts and see just some wonderful work, talk to the owners, see what their experiences were. Let's see, operating sessions. Well, not many people are set up to do virtual operating sessions.
No, but as far as the virtual layout tours, one thing that thanks to John, many of the layouts that are on the layout tours, John has done layout videos of.
Yeah.
So when you see what's happening for the tours that night, you can find the links in John's of many of those layouts.
Right. Yeah. But the thing with the actual real physical layout tours is you actually get to talk to the owners a lot or other model railroaders. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. But yeah, the virtual layout tours, honestly, all throughout John's channel, honestly, there's a great library of stuff that in some ways almost memorializes some really fantastic layouts over the years.
Yeah.
Yep. And in virtual, I don't get to go to many nationals because they're not around here. And I wish the nationals would do virtual like our national does when we have it here.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Paul. I've often thought that, how many people actually go to a convention, and the number is pretty small when you compare it against the overall membership. And there's a lot of time, effort, and money spent on conventions like that really only 10% or less of the people that are members get to benefit from. So I think it would make sense to have a virtual component. It's just a matter of, someone who's on one of these committees coming to the same conclusion. So,
gee, guess what we did?
Yeah. What a segue. Can you imagine that?
What a perfect segue. So San Luis Obispo is once again hosting the Pacific Coast Region Convention, and that's March 27th through 30th in 2025. And a very large portion of that convention will be available virtually. And part of that is because, guess what? John's involved in the convention.
Yeah.
And John and myself and others have pushed hard for this to become a permanent part of how we do it in the PCR. Let's always have a virtual component and make it as robust as we can. So if you go to the next slide, John.
This is robust right here.
Yep, this is what we're looking at. Going to be a good schedule for virtual. You got 3 full days of clinics. Every clinic that's going to be in a one room we call the virtual room will be available. We're going to have intro to ops, about 10 hours a day of content. And in between, there'll be discussions. There's going to be tours of the module layouts. We're going to get a good look at the contest room, or as we're now calling it, the celebration of models room. Virtual excursions. And some of the excursions John has also done videos about, or he's done videos about railroad things to see in San Luis County, which includes some of the places we're going to go. There's going to be a virtual meetup and a check-in. And, you know, if you can't be here, this is a really good way to go. Or for some people, this is their best way. As Murph was saying, not only can you look at it at your pace, but you can look at some of it later. Or you can get leads to where you want to go next, or what layout video you want to see next.
Yeah.
So highly recommend. And it's cheap. It's really cheap. If you're really looking at cost consciousness, for about 2 cups of Starbucks coffee, you can get into the virtual convention, let alone what coffee would cost probably at the hotel. And what's that last slide, John?
Awards and contest winners.
No, last slide. The next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what we want to mention is use a discount code of PCR 2025. The first 100 people that sign up will get $10 off that virtual ticket. It's really easy. Go to the website, pcr2025.org. There you can see a listing of what's going to be happening, the clinics available, layout tours, and such. And if you're going to sign up for virtual, make sure you use that code PCR2025.
Yeah.
And
for people's convenience, I've also included a link that goes directly to the virtual registration page. And I included the code as well in the description of this video. Were you going to say something, Murph?
Yeah. So one of the things that several other model railroaders and I did is we attended a virtual convention, and then on the SVL Discord site, we kind of joined together and had a running, sometimes snide commentary on the goings on in the virtual event. So we had the camaraderie. Actually, James, the president of the SVL now, came over to my house, and I had the virtual event on the TV, had Discord going on the computer, and we had a chat going on. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot more like really being at a convention because you had the camaraderie. You can do this. It's not hard.
No, and if you attend this or any of the other virtual events that you can, the SIG meet and so on, if you find that it's good, spread the word.
Oh,
This
yeah.
really should just be the norm for the entire NMRA, whether it be a national convention or region conventions. It's a new world, and we need to, we've got people from all over the world that attend virtual conventions. It'd be pretty hard to get somebody to fly out from England for a 3-day convention, but they sure could log in and do it. So spread the word.
Australian NMRA region, whatever it was, actually posted one several years ago. And it was really kind of cool, logging in the middle of the night and taking a look at it. It was like, this is a different view.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's also why we do the recordings post, right? So that people who are on a different time zone, and it happens. We get people from down under, we get people from the UK, we get people from everywhere that come to these virtual events. And there are a lot of people in other countries that model North American prototypes. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Seeing
so do it.
Prototypes.
Sign up for both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, just FYI, and I believe this is true for both of the events that we've just been talking about, everyone who signs up in person also gets access to the virtual stuff. So if you come in person in the morning, and maybe you ate something for lunch that didn't agree with you. I don't know. I mean, all kinds of things can happen, right? You can
Didn't
you
like
can,
the person you were sitting next
that
to.
could,
You know?
yeah, I'm having that experience right now. But the point is, you can catch it virtually from your hotel room or from home or whatever. Anyway.
Oh boy, I'm not sure I like where that's going. What did
Or
you?
you could, you could also see twice as many clinics that way. You can watch one in person and then watch the virtual one later.
Yeah,
That's true.
Can I add one plug? If you do go in person, PCR this year starts the day after our Northern California operations meet, Bay Rails ends. And there is a link on the PCR page, or you can just go to bayrails.com and request an invitation. So if you're an operator, this is really not a beginner's event, but if you are an operator and you've never been to Bay Rails and you'd like to come out, the weekend before we'll be having the majority of the meet. It runs Saturday through Monday. Then we'll have some bonus sessions, mostly in the South Bay, heading towards San Luis Obispo. And then, Tuesday you can do the bonus session, and Wednesday drive down to SLO, which is only about a 2-hour drive. And it's a beautiful drive, by the way, worth it for itself. And, if you're thinking, well, gee, I'd like to go to the convention, or I'd like to go to Bay Rails, but I can't really justify the travel costs for just 3 or 4 days, you can back them up one to the other and spread that airfare or that long drive from wherever over really 8 or 9 days of great model railroading. So, we're really trying to cross promote, but allow you to have a more immersive experience over a little longer time.
And if you have a significant other that travels with you that may not be interested in the railroad, tens of thousands of people come to San Luis Obispo County to vacation, to drink wine, to see things. So there's something for everyone here.
Tell our viewers who may not be familiar with the Central Coast what's going on, because this is a gorgeous area.
Well, I know I live in the north part of the Central Coast, and the little town I live in, Paso Robles, has over 300 wineries. Looking at Marf's glass there. But we have that. We have the UP and Amtrak run right through. There's a Hearst Castle. There's the beach. There's beautiful mountains. You can go to Santa Maria Valley. There's all kinds of wonderful agriculture. Cal Poly University. It's just a very diverse. You can go from low mountains to your feet in the beach in 15 minutes. And pretty much get anywhere in the county within about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Lots of people come for the tourism. We love it. Come and help pave my roads. Come spend some money here.
Right. And the last time we were there, Paul, I learned that you can go about 40 degrees cooler in about 30 minutes also by going from Paso into SLO there.
Yeah, it won't be much of a problem in March, but yes, in the summer, that is true.
Yeah.
And besides, you can come visit my railroad.
Which is well worth the visit.
If I bring wine, can I opt?
Yes, you can.
Awesome. There might be something happening here.
We've been known to do ops on demand.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there
thank
anything
you.
else about? Okay. Thanks, Paul. Do take care. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being here.
See you later, Paul.
Oops, I cut it. We got the bye, but sorry about that. All right. So I think we've taken care of all our housekeeping stuff. And I want to get to Stephen Priest, because this is a guy who's been a model railroader for a really long time. He's a master model railroader, if I'm not mistaken, from the NMRA, right? And has been in publishing. He's been in really every facet that I know of in the industry, and is now working with Class 1 Model Works, which is a company that you may be familiar with, because I've done a lot of product spotlights here on the channel, most of them with this guy sitting next to me, Seth, who for some reason, and I don't know how this happens, but it seems like whenever I get something sent to me from Class 1, that same week we have something that we're working on. So I just take it over to his place and we do the spotlights together. And we don't have any fun at all when we do them. And you can probably tell from watching them. So, but let's bring up Steven because I think you're going to really enjoy this.
Yeah, and he's no fun either.
Oh yeah, he's a terrible guy. Oh, I'm sorry, you're here. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Hey, gents, how are you this evening?
Great.
Excellent, excellent.
Did I do okay on the intro there? Did I?
Yeah. Fantastic, actually. I'm humbled, actually. It's model raring and prototype raring have been obviously part of my life since I was a teeny kid, and so it's really kind of ingrained in my life. And I'm probably one of the most fortunate guys anywhere because my wife, my beautiful, talented wife, is also just absolutely in love with model raring, and it's made our relationship and our marriage fantastic because we can, we go out and watch trains a lot and run around on vacation, and she runs around with Michelle Kempema and that whole group of goobers, and it's absolutely fun. She actually took off this summer without me for about a month and went out and with Michelle and Speed Moeller and some other people, and they just ran around, and she'd call me occasionally, hey, proof of life, I'm still here, and so that was that was a lot of fun watching her do things on her own with other people. So that was really cool.
I waved at her. She was at the E24 in Evanston, which is a N-scale event that I believe the video of that just came out recently, like late last month, as a layout tour. And she was working on something. I think she was doing some of her publishing duties. So I walked up the stairs and just gave her a.
No, she actually built a T-Track module for that. Which was really cool that she built, which was kind of reminiscent of our dating period. It's crazy now that I look at it, but I had a Volkswagen Bug that was painted in the Santa Fe war bonnet, and she made a model of that for her T-Track module with the two of us outside of it, photographing trains, and that was a lot of fun. So there we go.
Amazing.
There is that.
Right on. So we're going to talk today about model manufacturing, right? This is something that I have a keen interest in because I get a lot of models from a lot of different places, and I'm always fascinated by the process and want to learn more about it. So that was.
So do I. I'm fascinated, and I want to learn more about it too.
Right. So
what can you tell me, guys?
Maybe if you make up some stuff, but sound like you know what you're talking about, we'll learn something today.
Oh my. Well, gosh, let me give an intro of how I fell into all that. So, my professional studies were architectural engineering, and when I got out of college, the Santa Fe at that time hired me in an internship in their architectural department. Well, their architectural department, unbeknownst to them, was going to be dismembered and gotten rid of by the company so they could go to an outside contractor. And so I found myself working for a company without a job, really. So I slid over into train service because they had just started hiring. So I went and became a conductor and then a locomotive engineer. And then after a few years of doing that, some engineering jobs opened back up, and I went and became the assistant manager of the track geometry department in engineering. So I basically had my own passenger cars that I got to travel all over the Santa Fe and then later BNSF with, which was really interesting for about the first year or so. And then, too much of anything. And so I really enjoyed traveling and doing all that. Well, about that time, my former boss had told me, he said, hey, Steve, the file room downstairs that has all the thousands and thousands of drawings in it, if those disappear over the weekend, no one will ask any questions. So basically what had happened is he had been told to get a dumpster and throw all that stuff away, but he had an appreciation for all those drawings, and he knew I was, doing a little bit of publishing, and he knew I liked trains. So I got a whole bunch of my friends together, and we hauled drawings out of that vault in Kansas City for a day and a half. Well, now we have all these thousands of drawings of freight cars and structures and right-of-way maps. And I'm like, wow, what can we do with this stuff? I don't want to just sit on it, because I hate libraries that are for the sake of librarians. So what we ended up doing was me and Cynthia started talking. We wanted to have children, and I was always on call with the railroad, and she was always on call with the hospital or working nights. And we decided that probably we could pull it off, that we could start a publishing company, start utilizing this material and drawings and things, and start producing books. Now, this is when books were the shizzle, and everybody bought stuff. It was the height of the publishing, so the internet hadn't quite started taking a bite out of everything yet. So we started actually taking that material and doing books. So we started a company called Paired Rail Railroad Publications, and we ended up doing 31 books through that, where we wrote a significant amount of those, but we also had external contractors come in. So that's kind of how the whole working at home thing started, from going from being a professional railroader. So do you have any questions, or you want me to go on? Because I can just diatribe all day long. So.
I thought Seth had a question.
Do you have a question, Seth?
Well, so take us from there to how you ended up with Class 1.
Well,
It doesn't go straight from there, doesn't it?
No.
Actually, there really
This
is a
sounds
direct.
like about the time I first met you, which was in 97, and you and Cynthia were selling books at the PCR convention in Bakersfield.
Yeah, something like that. And
Well,
that was
you
fun.
You had to go to Bakersfield's? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got some good friends in Bakersfield.
Bakersfield has a great club.
anyway, so
ruined my jokes.
I'm on it.
So one of the things we had a lot of drawings of, obviously, was rolling stock, freight equipment, and locomotives. Like thousands and thousands of drawings. So we started doing books. So we did one book in particular was called Santa Fe Way Cars. It was on Santa Fe cabooses. And we put a bunch of drawings of the cabooses in this way car book. So after the book was released, about 3 months after that, I got a call from Frank Angstead at Intermountain. And Frank said, "Hey, you've got drawings in that book of Santa Fe cabooses. Do you mind if we use some of those to produce models?" And I said, "No, man, that'd be great. Fantastic. That's what I'm doing this for." And then he said 2 magic words. He said, "How much?" And I thought, oh, there's a profit center here. So I started doing drawings and things for manufacturers. And so I've worked with Cotto, Walthers, Athearn, Des Plaines Hobbies, Intermountain. I think the only people I never did any work for was Mike's Train House and maybe Micro. No, I sent Microtrain some stuff. So anyway, what I became basically is I became a contract drawing designer for all the model railroads. And we always looked at ourselves as what we call an overflow shop. So basically, I always told the manufacturers, hey, don't go firing people to hire me. Please don't do that. If you happen to get behind or you need another project manager in your company, man, I'll be glad to pick up that and we'll do projects. So, wow, that took off like fire. And it actually took off to the point where I ended up hiring designers within Paired Rail to do stuff. There were periods of time I was doing significant amounts of work for Athearn. So the weird thing is, and it's still so bizarre, if you have a model railroad, you probably, and you've never bought a Class 1 product, you still have products on there I've designed because I did a lot of things for other companies. And I mean a lot. There was a time when we were probably designing, I don't know, maybe an eighth of all the model railroad products that were brought out. I had a large team and we were doing lots of stuff contract-wise. So one day, I woke up and I said, I'm doing this type of work for everybody else. Why don't we just go ahead and push on through and just start a company? And there were a few things that happened between that. Obviously, I went to work for another company full-time. I actually worked for Intermountain full-time for a while, but I went to work for another company as well. And it became apparent that after running Paired Rail that I didn't particularly care working for other people. I'm really job oriented and business oriented, and I really like running a company. So that's kind of the short story behind it. There's always a lot of little teeny things. In between there, I became editor of Railroad Model Craftsman and the Anna Murray magazine. So I kind of took those segues, brought RMC back from its death knell that it had been under White River with Kevin Udaley. And we also did Model Railroad News, and we brought Tony Cook on board originally with Tony actually came on board with Paired Rail to help do design work. And then when Mike Lindsay needed an editor for Model Railroad News, Tony was perfect for that. So we introduced them, and he became the editor there. And we lost him, unfortunately, with that, because he's an excellent researcher of railroad stuff. So anyway, there's all kinds of stuff. But that's basically how the company started.
That's really cool. I didn't realize how, really listening to your quick story, Steve, goes to show in this industry, I'm going to call it, how
inbred. You can say inbred. It's okay.
I wasn't, no, no, the idea is that the people that I've met who work in the industry almost always are not just, they're not just someone making stuff to make money and sell stuff. They're very passionate about what they're doing. And I find that really cool about the industry. I don't know that I've met anybody who works for any of the major companies or any of the smaller companies either, for that matter, who aren't like hardcore foamers or hardcore model railroaders. And I use foamers as a nice thing, not like some people get angry when you say that,
But we say it with love.
We say it with love. Yeah. We have a thing where, we're out chasing trains or whatever, and someone calls me a foamer. It's like, yeah, I just answer to it. It's like, whatever. I'm not a foamer. I'm a professional. That's our joke.
Yeah.
But the point is how passionate people are about what they're doing. And I think your story really underscores that. I didn't realize, even as much as we've talked in the past, how involved you were with so many of the models that are on people's railroads. That's cool. So
yeah, and it's the hobby is so multifaceted. I mean, it really is. And there's when you look at human beings, we have kind of two conditions. We have consumer and producer. I mean, we all consume and we all produce. And so there's various levels within there of how much we consume or how much we produce. And really, as a model railroader, as a rail fan, a lot of people do a lot of consuming, but they don't realize how much they can really produce. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the hobby, I mean, even what you do here and what Seth does and writing articles about your model railroad. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to monetize and capitalize on the hobby. I mean, anybody that's ever built a model railroad ought to be just, especially nowadays with really good cell phones, ought to be photographing everything that they're building and writing short articles on it. I mean, you can make $700 or $800 a month just writing an article, a 7 or 8 page article, and you're doing it anyway, so there's a little publishing plug or whatever, but
Yeah.
I mean, it really does help a fund. Plus you become known, people begin to know you, and then, oh, you built something. And that's how I met Seth. And that's why me and Seth, have rubbed shoulders over the years, because I was building railroads and putting Chubb's CMRI in, and then Seth and Chuck Catala were building circuitry for that. And so it's like well, you kind of rub my back and I'll kind of rub your back, and there's a lot of that goes on in the hobby. It's incredible, and that working with people is just incredible, And so Seth's been at my house and run railroads, and all. I would never know some guy from California. It's like, wow, but now he's a good friend. So it's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So jumping into class 1, I guess the first question everybody, we're all looking for that model we don't have, or a better version of something we do. And how do you identify new product opportunities? You're out there making, beautiful models.
Thank you. Well, there's a lot of ways to do it. When you look at models, you have to have a balance. Well, the first thing is you really want to have, in order to have cash flow and survive and eat, you really have to have a good constant flow of models. Doing one model a year, no, it's not going to make it. So you really have to up your game, and you have to bring out as many models as you can. So that falls into two categories. There's low hanging fruit, and then there's stuff that really takes a lot of study and design. The beauty of having all these railroad drawings is there's a considerable amount of low-hanging fruit there. In other words, we've got packages and sets of drawings and photographs of certain cars that the railroad had. And these are the railroad's files on their equipment. And so basically, we can take that stuff and I won't say quickly, but relatively rapidly turn that into a product. So that's a beautiful thing. Then there are products that obviously are going to take a couple years, like locomotive production. If you do things right and you're doing things that have never been done before and that are interesting, it's going to take you a few years to do your first locomotive, especially. And so, but the decision on what to do, it depends on a lot of things. To make ends meet, you have to have the flow of capital. So you try to bring out models that, number one, have what we call legs. In other words, you want things that aren't just one-offs. Although you can make money with one-offs, it's a good idea when you're starting to, hey, you just get out there and here's a box car that 15 railroads had, and we've got it in 38 paint schemes, and we've got drawings of it, and we have photographs of it, and by the way, there's one in blah, blah, blah that we can go measure. So the first thing is having that. With that said, we also listen to a lot of people. We talk to a lot of people. We have a lot of friends in the industry, and there are cars out there that need to be done that are favorites of people. And we did the TWF-10, which was our piggyback car. That was a very interesting car because it was very unique, but they were all over the place. Even though they only built 74 of them on the Santa Fe Transcon, I used to switch those into Argentine all the time. There'd be 2 or 3 of them in each train because they were a heavy haul car. And I always loved that car. And that was a personal favorite. And when I mentioned that to some of my intermodal friends, they're like, oh yeah, Steve, you've got to do that. So we ended up doing that car. And even though it was a trailer train car, a TTX car only, I mean, SP never had them or anybody else, the car sold very well because of how we marketed it, because it was one of those really cool, unique piggyback cars. And so you can hit both sides of that. Just because it's a rare car doesn't mean you can't do it. You may have to push on it a little harder. And the beauty of what you're doing right now with multimedia and things like this is we're able to inform people. We're able to talk to people and say, hey, this is why this car is neat. This is why you should own one. And that really helps our reach. What you guys do really helps the reach, because educating people suddenly gives them the itch to buy the car. So that's kind of how it works out.
Cool.
So do you have a web form or something where, one of our viewers could say, well, Stephen, I really think this is a cool car. Can you look into it?
Well, that's there's several ways we handle that. First of all, we have emails, and definitely those are on the website, and people can always email us. Second of all, we do a lot of trade shows. We do the major trade shows every year because we want to talk to people. And trade shows, I'll be honest with you, trade shows really are not profitable. Even if we're selling there, they're really not profitable. You just about break even. But the reason we do it is to talk to people. The other thing is that if you have a car, Seth, if you have a car that you really like, human beings are lazy, including me. The way you can get me to really look at something is put a package together. Do some of that research up front. Hey, Steve, I got a set of drawings of this. Here's all the roads that had them. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing like that low-hanging fruit to really get things off the ground. And we've had a couple projects like that where people have come and they've just dropped a research packet right in front of us saying, hey, here's your research, let's go. And so then we'll look into it and we're like, hey, this is a fantastic idea. You just saved me 4 or 5 months of research, and because it's all right here, let's run with it. So, if you guys have something out there, and I have several people that have done that, and there's several people I work with right now that we're doing just that kind of project. Because there's a lot of low hanging, and just because I have access to a whole bunch of drawings and I know people, that doesn't mean I know everything. Oh my gosh, no way. There's all kinds of stuff out there. I'm like, I had no idea that even existed. Wow. So we're always interested in talking with people about things. Sure.
I'm always blown away, Steve, by the amount of detail that I read about. Because when you guys send me stuff to do spotlights on the channel, I don't just get the bottle and go, oh, cool. I look at the website and see, what is this thing and what was it used for? And it's like, like the TW, you mentioned the TWF-10s, right? Those heavy,
heavy haul intermodal cars. Yeah.
I didn't even know that those things existed. I'd never seen it. They look like lowriders or something, like you can't see the wheel profile.
Yeah.
And I always thought, I've never seen these before. I didn't know these. I even had someone comment on the video, I've never seen this, so it must have never existed. It's like, oh no, these existed. I was just blown away though. But I looked at it, and looking at all the stuff because you get into a lot of detail about what everything is, and I'm always blown away by the detailed density, not of the model too, but of all the obvious, clear research that went into it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, why is this car here?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
did the railroad want it for?
Yeah.
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 And
There's a lot to learn.
and part of that's the educational process of educating, just like I was educated. I mean, I used to scour RMC and MR, when I was a kid back in the early 70s, so much information. I'm like, oh, that's why that exists, and taught myself how to spot locomotives. That's how you tell a Jeep 7 from a Jeep 9 and all that stuff. And so part of manufacturing really, it's a multifaceted thing. You're making models, but you're also educating people about what existed through models. That's really cool because a lot of the stuff's gone. Most steam engines are gone or are inoperable at least, and to build models of them so they come to life again, that's a really neat thing to do, especially for people that never lived that, in real time. I have a son, he's a master model railroader. And, I remember, wishing that I saw F units, my son wishes he saw SD45s and stuff. It's like, wow. And so I now understand that, really amazing transformation and responsibility of this generation to educate the next generation, through models or books or just presentations or things. Mike says, are you bringing anything to Amherst for sale? Yes, we are actually.
Okay.
I will say we were super blessed with our Black Friday sales. It almost totally cleaned our warehouse out. We were blown away, and we're actually upping the amount of models we're producing because we've been selling out of stuff so fast, which is really great. It's a great problem to have. So we will have some things at the show to hopefully to announce. We'll see if we can get some of our deco models of some upcoming projects so we can announce some projects there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, I do have a question about Joel, right? That's your son. He was heading into the whole relationship part of life and college and all that. How is that transited through from being a master model railroader to now?
Well, we call that the DING, D-I-N-G portion of life, the dating, all the ings, the traveling. And so what Joel did, I'll be real brief with this, but one of the things about Joel is that he was born into a household of model railroading. So he had an excellent shop. He had milling machines and everything you could ever imagine. He grew up in the shop playing around. So him getting his MMR was, at 12 years old. He got it when he was 12. He had scratch built cars and everything by the, so he loves doing that. He then didn't want to go to college. And so we said, hey, you can work and invest until you get out on our, or you can look at other things. He ended up going into the Air Force. And so he went into the Air Force and went to Germany and spent time in Germany in the Air Force. And then when he got out of the Air Force, he came home and married his high school sweetheart. And now they're both working. And so he's looking for a house right now. I will see. We never force model railroading on him. Of course, he's married right now, and they're doing a lot of the married things, and traveling and doing some of that kind of stuff. And so I think he'll come back to it. I'm actually layoutless right now because I have this neuroses about me that when I throw myself into something, I do it 100%. And I was afraid to have a model railroad and a startup business at the same time because there's a conflict internally in me. So me and Cynthia downsized homes when Joel left in the Air Force. And so I got a home that had a finished basement. So I have no railroad, which is great because it's allowed me to concentrate on my business. So, but I think he'll do just fine. I don't know if he'll ever build a railroad or not.
Okay.
At some point, he's going to inherit a whole lot of stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know what he'll do with that. And I'm going to sit on the sidelines and watch that and see what happens with great curiosity.
Thanks a lot for the sideline. It's a great progression.
Yeah. And when if the business continues to take off like it does, me and Cynthia will probably buy another home with a basement. And we'll probably, as we train people to take over our positions, legacy management within the business, and we kind of back off. I'll probably head down the railroad path again. as well.
Cool.
So I'm sure he'll be at my house working, if nothing else.
It is excellent.
Awesome.
Wow. Cool.
Excellent.
I'm trying to think of questions.
Well, let's go through the next one.
Yeah, I
here.
was going to say he's got a whole series.
Yeah,
of slides
well, quick disclaimer. I've spent a good part of my career as a product manager in the electronics industry. So I have some clue as to what goes on to, bringing a product to market from a, fairly vaguely expressed concept. So maybe you could take the viewers through, how it works in the model railroad business.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So when I had worked with manufacturers, obviously, through other companies. So, a lot of the times I would work directly with factories. So I had a pretty good idea of where the factories were, and most of them currently are in China. And there's actually, as near as I can tell, there's at least 16 different factories that make model railroad stuff, and there's probably more. We get solicited on a regular basis from factories that are producing, because China is a manufacturing country. That's not company, country. And that's really what they do. They manufacture. They're the world's manufacturer. And there are some things that allow them to do that. And we won't go into that unless we really want to. But the way the Chinese run the businesses, it's very good for what we do. It's very good time-wise, accuracy-wise, and economically for what we do. So it's a cycle. And the cycle is, we've already talked about part of it. We find model A. We've got this model we want to build. Seth has a car that he wants done. He's given me plans for it. We're like, yeah, we think we can make money on it. We've done a little bit of market research, to make sure that nobody else has produced that car recently, or that if they have, we can do a better rendition of that so it's actually marketable. Especially in locomotives. Locomotives are very tight right now. Just about everything, not everything, but just about everything has been produced. So now it's a matter of revisiting those with newer technology, better detail, and things that were not on original models. So we have a model. We've sat down and we've produced drawings for it. We will send the drawings to maybe a couple factories and get a bid. Basically, hey, we'd like to do X amount of these. What do you think you can produce them for? Financially and timeline wise, how long will it take you to produce them and how much? So that's pretty standard. And then they go out to all their subcontractors and get the pricing from their subcontractors for motors, PC boards, plastic injection, underframe casting, wheel turning, all the things that are required to make a model, especially if it's a locomotive. So that's cool. So then we get a bid for that, and we sit down as a group and of engineers, and my company is not my company. The company, Class 1, is actually run and managed by 5 owners, and we're equal partners in it. And we have people from all the major business walks of life. But I do share a very good engineer, Mike Brusty, and me both are the engineering team. And we sit down and we will go over that, and we'll say, yeah, this makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, the price is too high, we may talk to them a little bit. The factories say, why is this so high? And they say, well, you're doing this, and we haven't done this before. We're worried about it. We want to make sure we're covered. So now we get a price. We have a price, and then we'll sit down with with Brad Voth, who's our CFO. Brad will run all the numbers, scrutinize it. He's a scrutinizer, and take a look at it and say, yeah, guys, we can run with this, or it's borderline, or no way. So then if the project gets the thumbs up from everybody, we'll then sit down and say we will award the project, and we will then start working with our Chinese partners on this. So they will then start sending us drawings. They'll draw one thing at a time. They'll start sending us drawings. We'll look at that and say, yeah, that's great, or no, we want the cross section finer, or you're doing that out of plastic. Air horns in plastic in HO scale is not a good idea. Let's make those out of brass. So we start running cycles. So the cycle goes back and forth. I have a couple of my factory owners that call me every morning. So I'm in the office at 6 o'clock, which is about 7 o'clock their time in the evening. they'll call me and we'll talk for about an hour or so every morning on projects. So we talk with them constantly and do a lot of Skyping and Zooming so we can talk about things interactively, dynamically. There's everything, especially when you're working with people that are very far away. An email cycle can take 2 days to complete. We can do it by talking with them in an hour or so. So we also go to China twice a year. We go to all of our factories in China. We currently have 4 factories. We go visit all of those every single year. And I'll show you some pictures of those here in a while because I have some images that we're going to go through. And so at that point they start, and then we get basically, you remember when we were kids? I know it's a long time ago for most of us. You remember when you'd buy a car kit and you'd open it up and it was gray plastic on sprues? We get that exact same thing, which is kind of our injection or our build samples, where we basically get those first and we get a look at the injections. And we're like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is too thick, this is warped. We need to figure out how to keep this from warping. So we take a look at that. Then about probably 2 months after that, we'll get the first of our build samples. In other words, they will actually assemble, not paint, but assemble the models, everything, trucks, wheels, couplers, window glass, electronics, and they'll send that to us as a build sample. And we may go through a couple cycles of build samples. And then when we're happy with the build cycles, it goes back to them. And they will then build a couple models and they will do all the painting and lettering. And those are what are called deco samples or decoration samples. Those samples then come to us and we look at it and say, oh man, that color is way off, or it's pretty close, or a variety of things. Since I mentioned color and deco samples, I want to talk about that a little bit. One of the things that we do at our company is we are not gung-ho about going out and creating our own colors. We like to design into existing ecosystems of color. SP locomotives, for instance. There's lots of SP locomotives out there. We'll just go and match the colors that the more popular models or the older companies are already using because our locomotives are going to end up in consist with other people's locomotives. And there have been some really, really bad things that have happened, especially when you have a company that makes passenger cars and then another company makes the F units. And when you put those two trains together, the colors don't match between the F units and the passenger cars. Now, we're not going to play that. We're going to match into existing ecosystems so far as we can because that's a really good way to do things color-wise. And that may seem like a cop-out, but why reinvent the wheel when the wheel's sitting right in front of you? So
even more.
Yeah.
When equipment sits out in the sun, or when they're exposed to going through tunnels with a lot of smoke, or Lord knows whatever's happening, yellow isn't yellow anymore.
Yeah. And there are issues like that too, because there are issues that, are you making a brand new model right out of the paint shop, or are you making a model that's been in service for a while? And sometimes you have to decide that too. But there's only so, and we did that with the TWF10s. We actually had 3 different kind of levels. We had a brand new, we had an intermediate, and then we had what we called the well-used car. And the colors on those were different because they were, matched into what was happening in the real world.
Yeah. How many times have you seen a bloody nose SP unit or a pink nose SP unit?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But colors can be, and there is, colors are the Achilles heel of the model air industry. Color is
arguments over
it's
it.
very subjective, and things weather differently on the prototype, and but a lot of people, a lot of modelers, and I'm not dissing modelers, but a lot of modelers think that they have a disconnect between automobiles and trains. And they don't realize that railroads, it's a piece of equipment. It's basically a locomotive to a railroad company is like the air conditioner outside sitting out on the pad outside your house. It's a machine that serves a purpose in your business. And they don't spend a lot of time, worrying about color, even worrying about placement of letterings or things on locomotives. I'll segue real quick into something. I remember when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time around the Santa Fe. I grew up around it. And one day I was in Mulvane, Kansas. There was a switch engine sitting there. I think it was a Jeep 35. And I went up and looked on it, and I was at an angle where the sun was glinting off the paint. And I could see the old paint underneath the new paint. And so the big billboard Santa Fe lettering on the side of the engine, I was looking and I could see 3 separate applications of Santa Fe paint on there, and they were nowhere near being aligned. I mean, one of the Santa Fe applications was 6 inches off the current one. So people don't care at the railroad when they paint that stuff. They have a template, they just hang it on the side and they hit it. And so that there's at least 3 different variations of that GP35 paint wise. So there we go. Now, that's not to say we don't spend a lot of time trying to make things super accurate. We do. But the railroad, man, it's all over the place, especially when you come to freight cars. When they get repainted, wow, they're all over the place.
I like to remind people that the only time when 2 locomotives look similar is when they're both fresh out of the paint shop. So
yeah. And actually, that adds a lot of flavor to your fleet. Having slightly faded yellows on some of your Santa Fe locomotives, that really is what makes it look realistic, because that's what happens in the real world. I mean, the Santa Fe owned over 2,500 locomotives. They're all in different stages of their life at any given time, but they're all working together. So the possibility of something that has got 10 years on its paint, and the possibility of it being with something that's got a year on the paint are those possibilities are pretty high. And so you're going to end up with things that, wow, look at the contrast in that. And that's what makes it really neat.
yeah. Sorry, we stopped you in the middle of the process. So you got back the deco samples, I think was the last one.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what I was talking about.
I'm glad you remember.
And what's funny about that is I don't remember anything. So I'm just like, mark this in your calendar. I remembered something.
So there's no point in doing anything. No. Anyway, so we have decos now, and then we basically approve the decos, and then they go into production. And then they produce the models. Now, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes during that. Obviously, when you design a model, you have to design a box. So, we have a box design going on. We have advertising going on. If it's a more complicated model, we're like a locomotive, we're doing manuals for it. Here's your DCC manual. So there's a lot of other tertiary things, secondary and tertiary things that go on behind the scenes. And then Cody Cameron, who's our chief marketing officer, he's spinning up the marketing engine to start selling things, because people want to know about things. They want to do. So we'll have releases, we'll have announcements, we'll have Facebook stuff. So there's a lot going on behind that. And then we'll start a pre-sale process where people will start purchasing the engine or freight cars, whatever they are. And that's nice. That helps us kind of begin to get some idea of rough idea of numbers. But we don't really use that for numbers because it's pre-orders are skewed, and then we produce, and there we go. And then the models come in, and we have a week of extremely intense shipping. For those of you that pack a lot of stuff for Christmas time, oh man, you ought to get a container in, and you ship and ship and ship and ship, and it's wonderful. But you get tired of it too, because but it's fantastic watching stuff go out. It's really a lot of fun.
Well, think of all the smiles of the people that are going to be opening those boxes and going, wow, this is even better than I thought, right?
Yeah. And it's wonderful to do that, because a lot of what we're doing is kind of a service to the model railroad industry. It's people are model railroaders. And one of the things that is enjoyable about model railroading is buying stuff and buying new stuff and different stuff and seeing how manufacturers are pushing the bar.
Make more
how
than
far we've come in the last 20 years with models. Wow. I remember when it was awesome when Athearn brought their scale hood units out. Wow, look at this. It's got a scale hood on it. We were so excited.
Yeah.
Now look at where we're going. So that's basically kind of the process.
So Stephen, you do more than you produce more than just the pre-ordered count.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, pre-orders, they're not very accurate. Pre-order stuff is not very accurate. We will produce considerably more than the pre-orders.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've often wondered about that, because I know that pre-orders, while they are good for gauging general interest, they can lead to some weird numbers, because I know a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I want that, and then they never buy it. So it's like, how do you reconcile that with how many that you order? Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like
yeah, and we've played with all of that. There's 2 ways you do pre-orders. You do non-pay upfront pre-orders, or you do pay upfront pre-orders. And either one of those is going to skew you a little bit, because if you don't require payment on the pre-order. You get all kinds of people that get excited and pre-order, and then they never buy it down the road. So you end up ordering more models than you should have based on your pre-order numbers. The second thing is if you go to a business model where you require pre-orders up front, then what you have is you have a certain amount of people that aren't going to buy things sight unseen. So that skews it the other way. So either way, and when I say skew, it's not like this, irrecoverable state you find yourself in. No, not at all. Either one of those methods that you use, and different manufacturers do that differently. Either one of those, but the most important thing is that if you're going to do any type of pre-order, you need to get the model out in a decent amount of time. That's why we we will not even announce a product till we're just about ready to go with it, because I've had models that I've waited for 10 years after pre-ordering, and that's just what's the point of that?
And even though I like Athearn, there's been a couple, we didn't get enough pre-orders, so we decided not to even make it. I'm like, yeah, really?
Yeah, there's several companies like that. But you know what? The neat thing about this is to watch all the different companies operate differently. And that was one of the really neat things is when I was doing contract work for different companies, I learned a lot about the internal workings at that time of how a lot of those companies operated, because you could see, you were talking to their NPD or their new product development group, and those people would share things with you, and I learned, and it was amazing how different companies, how different their internal business models are.
Right.
And it's really, really interesting. It was amazing to me. I'm like, because you'd think, well, eventually everybody would just kind of, settle into the same business model because that's what works. Well, actually, there's a whole bunch of things that work. So, we have a lot of model companies and a lot of small model companies, and so it's fantastic that the small guy can make it and the large guys can make it. It amazes me.
Yeah, I've seen it with miniature wargaming, Warhammer 40K Games Workshop. You do a pre-order with them, and they're like, "No, we're gonna make them for the first however many thousand, but that's it." And so you lucked out. You weren't early enough on a pre-order, and I'm like, wasn't a pre-order kind of we should make at least this many? Evidently not.
Yeah. Well, and our type of manufacturing isn't like making toilet paper, where you build a toilet paper factory and you just crank the same thing out every day. And then you work on your efficiencies to make your toilet paper making property or process and factory more efficient. So then you can hone in on we because of the way the Chinese factories are, they basically, they're constantly doing work, and it always changes, and so constantly, so we have to set a number. A lot of people are like, I can't believe you're sold out. Why didn't you produce more? Well, my answer to that is, why didn't you buy earlier? Because really that helps us, but it also ensures that you'll get something. And that's not a nasty sales technique. It is literally, we get a window in the factory to produce something. We produce as many models in that window as we can, and then that window shuts and they're on to other projects.
Right. No, I really get that.
Yeah.
Do you ever do, I don't know, we call them FUBIs, I guess?
FUBIs?
Yeah.
Well, not yet. There's two ways to look at that, because there's model raretors are many different personality types. There's a large group of people out there that just absolutely love colorful things. I love going into out east here. We have and you may have them out where you're at. We have a chain called Menards, and Menards, one of the people somewhere in their upper business structure is a model rarator. It's got to be, because they bring out model train stuff and they have model train stuff. And I go in and look at this stuff, and it is amazing how much liberty has been taken with paint schemes. I'll just put it that way.
We call those freedom trains, man.
But it's neat stuff, and they sell it like crazy. So, and so the rivet counters and that group of people over here, the people that are really precise, they're sitting over here going, how can anybody buy that? That never existed. But the FUBI people are over there going, oh man, that stuff's really cool, but it's boring. It's white and there's a little teeny logo up in the corner. I want something exciting. So, model raretors are many different things. So, so to answer your question, we haven't done any FUBIs yet, but there may be a time that we venture into that. Model slumming is what we call it here.
I hate to admit it, but I don't. I defend various manufacturers for FUBIing because, well, they've sunk the money into the tooling. They got to make their money back. I want companies to keep working.
Yeah.
And I find it to be important.
And I think probably really one of the good ways to do things is to, if you have, let's say that there's a particular way car caboose that is really, you can't kit bash it easily. It's a model that really ought to be released, but it had a fairly limited number of prototype railroads. You can bring that out in its super accurate form for the railroad that had it, but then you can also bring some FUBIs out, which will help pay for the tooling and help the manufacturer recoup. And that's an important thing. We haven't run into that yet, but we very well may as we build and fill out our business structure. At some point, we may go, hey, if we want to continue to grow as a business, this is another avenue or venue that we can head down, to go ahead and continue to increase our profits year over year.
Right. One thing that I would like to stress, undecks would be really nice.
Yeah, undecks are a challenge in the current world. And the reason is that when we make a model, we really don't make one model. We make a whole bunch of different models with different detail parts on them. Even like our 86-foot boxcars, they've got several underframes, they've got several, and so you can make undecked models, but they're actually as expensive or more expensive than a built model because they have to have the full variety of parts to them. You may have several different wolf walks, several different end crossovers, several different underframes, even several different trucks, because it's no longer a model.
I would argue
variations in there. So, the day of buying an Athearn undecorated F unit and then putting all your parts on it, that was a cool way to do things.
Right.
Wow. The undecorateds that's a challenge. And I know there are companies that do, and they do it well. I would really like to know how many of those they sell and if it's worth if it's worth the effort to do. But I probably will not get those numbers from people because they probably won't share them. So, because
I would argue for a single variant undeck would be just a fine thing for my private railroad.
Oh, right, because you can paint it into your own scheme, I guess.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And then I could justify whatever you put on it because, that's obviously what my guys decided.
Well, because my private label railroad, didn't make the big order with the manufacturer, so they just tacked on to whatever it was that the model you built was.
Part of my impetus behind this, Stephen, is that basically at SVL, which the SVL colors are green and yellow, we've basically been grabbing every Chicago Northwestern engine in sight, and it becomes an SVL engine, regardless of what's on it.
Now, what you're not going to like is my answer. Because why I have an extreme appreciation for what you do from a business standpoint, taking on really small or minor, even things such as undecorateds, I'm not sure if we can make profit on it. Now, we may try it at some point. We may try it at some point and do some, some undecorated, kit form things. I've got tons of them, and there are companies that do that. I just don't know if there's enough market to make it worthwhile doing that.
That's worthwhile hearing, actually. Thank you.
Oh, I get it. I understand, man. My son made a Virginia and Ohio railroad for his MMR, and so he literally had to build and paint everything. So I understand it. I get it.
Yeah.
I have a question that's kind of related, but maybe a different tangent. And if you're going to answer this later, you can hold off on it. But one of the things I noticed the first time I started seeing your Class 1 models for the samples that got sent to me was that the prices seem pretty low considering how detailed. I mean, these are super detailed. I would put them up against almost any other model manufacturer that I've seen. And they will compare very favorably, if not better, than most of what we see out there.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do you is the pricing? And maybe I'm mistaken, but it seems lower to me. Is that because maybe someone else that produced something put what I'm going to call a fake price and then cut it down to make it say, oh, it's a deal, or is it because you don't do like MSRPs and then have dealers, or how does that?
Well, it's amazing when you own a company, how much fat you can keep out of the system, how much bloat. I mean, it really is. And that's part of it. You have a lot of companies that have been around a long time ago, and you have people that work there. And I'm not going to say the people are bad, but how vested they are in the company is huge. And the five of us here currently, we're pretty vested in making this work. And so consequently, we really watch our costs and our expenses. I mean, and we do a lot of extra work for that. We spend a lot of time with the Chinese manufacturers. I mentioned earlier, we talk every single morning to them, every single morning. And a lot of that is to keep additional costs and things like that down. So, yeah. Some of the guys earlier had some interesting questions. They said, hey, why don't you go speak to the hobby shops and things and see how many undecks they sell? That's actually a really good, idea, because they're out there where the rubber meets the road. And that's a fantastic question. And we might do that. We might very well do that.
Isn't your business model though direct? I mean, it might be different.
We do work with a few hobby shops. So we work with some hobby shops because we understand the value of impulse buying. Believe me, I understand the value of impulse buying. Being a model rarer, man,
I can quit any time.
Walking into that hobby shop and seeing that model that you didn't know existed, man, and then realizing that if you don't buy it right there on the spot, you might not ever get it again. I'm very guilty of that. I have to tell you, going over to Dave Lilbaugh's tangent table at any trade show, I used to buy a lot of models for him, just impulse, and plus he's a great guy, so I wanted to help him out too. But yeah, so there is some impulse that you get from a large hobby shops, as well. So let's see. So I guess if you want, let's get into some images. Let's look at some factories. Are you interested in going? I have, like I said, we go to China twice a year, and we consider the people in our factories as literally part of our company. These are our business partners, and they're incredible people, and we love sitting down. And most of them, oddly enough, are model raritors too. That's why they got involved in the model rarity industry, was because they're modelers and they like doing this kind of stuff. And so it's a lot of fun. So this is this shot here is in the paint booth, and this is one of our ARI hopper cars that are going to be coming in here pretty quick. And these are some assemblies that they're looking at, and we were over there looking at the assembly work, and quite happy with it. And these are going to be delivered here the first quarter of next year. In fact, pretty quick here, they're going to be coming in. So we're really happy with that. This is actually a lady that owns a model railroad factory. She makes a lot of our loads for our things like that. And they use a very interesting process there that she won't show us, but it has to be some type of a dissolvable mold, because a lot of these loads are not 3D printed. They're actually a resin casting. And Kathy is amazing and really a sweetheart of a gal. And that's Mike Brusky. Mike is the other design engineer here at Class 1. Mike is retired. He worked for ConAgra for years designing plants. If you've ever had a Marie Callender meal or a Slim Jim, Mike designed those factories. So you already know Mike just through his food. So, so this is what a meeting looks like. Generally, what you'll have is they'll have a lot of test shots and a lot of models there for us. And then we'll sit down and we'll talk, and we'll have a screen behind us that's so we can project the drawings, the 3D drawings and renderings. And then generally you'll have a couple Chinese engineers. The gentleman standing to my right, there's a Chinese engineer. The two girls on the left are interpreters. So basically they're interpreting our English into Chinese. And the gal that's standing there, Jenny, she's actually one of the factory owners as well in this particular factory. And so we'll spend generally a couple days up to a week running over all the nuances of everything from electronics to weight to type of materials to challenging how thick cross sections are. And It's a lot of fun. It's an absolute blast. And here's another picture of that. We're talking about looks like hood doors on locomotives, and that's their design team and their interpreters, and of course, me doing what I do best, which is blah 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 blah. So it's an interesting process. Here we are again. I'm taking notes in a notebook of things I need to do on my end. This is a locomotive project that we have coming out, and basically we're talking about the process of manufacturing here. Lots of really good back and forth, and I love that because it's such a key part of design. Here is a simpler part of design. This is a truck. This is a truck that goes under our GSC flat car. The flat car actually has several different types of trucks in it, and then you've got solid or friction bearings and then roller bearings. So we're doing all these variations as we bring out subsequent runs of the models. So this gets you an idea of what the drawings look like. That's kind of the side there, and then here's the under view with all the brake system. Incidentally, in these drawings, you'll notice a bunch of different colors. When you see different colors in these drawings, those are separate pieces, separate injections. So we can keep our mold list straight. In other words, how many molds and how many parts do we have? When we look at the drawing, we can tell exactly how many parts are in that.
Can I make a comment about this real quick, Stephen?
Sure.
Just on this picture alone, because let me give it a little context. A lot of times on a product spotlight, for example, people will come on and they love to complain, like, why is this so expensive? Why are models so expensive? Like, what? It used to be $5 for all these things. Look at this alone and tell me how many people watching who would like to complain about the price want to scratch build this thing. So I just want to make that point because I think
I mean, there's probably 30 parts on that by the time you get the wheel insulators, the wheels, all the parts, and there's several different types of plastic there.
Right.
Because you have plastic that needs to be flexible, but you also have plastic that needs to be painted. There's all kinds of different materials in there. And I'll say a couple things. First of all, you can still get inexpensive models. There are all kinds of companies out there that still, Walthers has a whole train line. So, if basically when you go out to purchase a model, you have two issues. One of them is cost, and the other one is the detail level. And basically you can still get inexpensive models. There's blue box stuff everywhere. Sometimes I'll pick up an Athearn SD40-2 or whatever, just to mess with it, to paint it, to build it, whatever, but that's not what we're doing here. And that's not what a lot of other companies are doing. We're producing models that basically are very high quality, very researched, that you can take out of the box, put on your railroad, and man, there you go. You're in good shape, And so, a lot of people complain about the price, but I liken it this way. If you take any of our models and you just want to talk paint, so our models are somewhere around $50 to $60, in that price range. If you go out and you buy 3 colors, 3 bottles of paint, paint is about $7 a bottle now, so there's $21 gone. If you go buy decal setting solution, basically by the time you're done, you've spent the money you're spending on your model in just paint and decals. I mean, literally. Sure. And I know this because I'm a scratch builder. I've built hundreds of scratch built models. And so really, what we're doing, I realize it has a cost to it, but it really is extremely cost effective just because of the amount of work we put into things. And that picture right there is a sample of that. So, but I do want people to know that I understand the challenges of being young and not having a lot of expendable income. Please realize that there are a lot of models out there that you can still pick up for reasonable, for your state of life, reasonable cost. Go to eBay, man, there's tons of models on eBay for prices that you can afford. I know we all want the high-end stuff for as cheap as you can get it. I get that. We work very hard to give that to people. I mean, we work really hard with the economics to keep things so people can afford things. So anyway, I'll go back to the show. So that's a freight car truck. Do you have another question?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a kit builder, doing mostly military models, just clipping all those parts out and cleaning up the flash and assembling them would be probably 20 to 30 minutes just for the one truck.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That really is. But yeah, I appreciate I also miss the old days of Blue Box Athearn, where I can pick it up and I won't break anything when I have it on the layout.
But please realize that's all still out there.
Yes, I understand that. And yeah,
we haven't lost that.
Manufacturers that do that.
Yeah, we
But
haven't
they're
lost that.
different.
We just give you a different level of model.
And I appreciate that. I've seen your work. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's see where are we at. Let's move on here. So this is basically we've sent them files and drawings, and they're making sure that everything has draft angles on it. I'm sure everybody out there has made blueberry muffins in a pie in a pan, and a blueberry, a muffin pan. You notice the muffin pan has angles in it, so the muffin comes out of the pan. Most people don't realize that every single piece of plastic that is injected has a slight angle like that in it, which is called a draft angle. So it pops out of the mold.
Yep.
And so we allow the Chinese to do the final design work on things for two reasons. First of all, the draft angles, which I just explained. And the second reason is because plastic has different shrinkage rates. So because a plastic may shrink 3%, you have to inject it at 103%. So if you're using different types of plastic, which almost every single model has, you may have molds being created at 102, 105, 101%. And all those things, when they cool and they go through their shrinkage process, will actually fit together into your 100% model. And that's an amazing thing to me. That's mind-blowing, because even your clear plastic that are in your windshields of your locomotives or passenger cars, that has different shrinkage rates than the rest of the model plastics that are used in your model. I'm amazed that we get anything to fit together. But we do, and they're incredible at this. They're really incredible at doing this.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Speaking of injection, these are big injection machines right here. These are basically, if you look at the gentleman there with the kind of blonde hair, which is funny for Chinese because they're all dark haired, but he's got that red hair thing going on. He's looking at a clear plastic injection. You can see it in his hand. So this has just come out of the injection machine, and he's going to look at it and inspect it. And then the gal there is basically clipping it, clipping parts out of it, clipping the injection sprue out of it. And then that'll go in a tray, and that tray will then go into the assembly line in another room to be assembled into a model. This is the assembly floor, one of the assembly floors. Basically, you know how you sit at a desk, for all you scratch builders or people that like to build high-end kits, you know how you build that kit? Well, it's done the same way in China.
All day.
Yep. And these people work all day long at it. Beautiful factories. They're air conditioned. They're wonderful factories. They definitely are not like slave labor houses at all. I mean, the people are paid well. They have good work. They even have a cafeteria where food is served at a lot of the factories. So one of the things we mentioned earlier is we talked about pricing and things and building kits yourself. One of the side businesses that I want to start at some time is I want to start a dating service between all the rich older U.S. guys and all the young, beautiful Chinese model building girls. I think that would be a really great dating service.
Especially if they're model railroaders, right?
That's what I'm saying. You get the older guys with the money and the nice house, and you get the young model building Chinese girls. It's a perfect match. How's that for a dating service?
Yeah, I don't know. It might work.
I'm just kidding. The thought does cross your mind when you're over there, because it's amazing, and they are, they're all trained before they build things, and they're really good at what they do. There is a certain amount of waste. I'll tell you right now. There is a certain amount of waste. They mess things up. They make mistakes. So there is that as well. So everything they touch doesn't turn to gold, just like everything.
I have never clipped a model wrong ever.
No,
yeah,
no.
I should hide this comment then, because someone's talking about how they're all mastered. Well,
they really are amazing, and a lot of it is they're young, they have good dexterity, and they've got good equipment
and good eyesight.
I mean,
and you aren't a master model railroad unless you click wrong a lot of times.
Yeah, and you'll notice the lighting in there is really good.
Yeah.
So here's my wife Cynthia and Brad Voth. Brad is our CFO. He's the one with the glasses on his head, and then of course the two gals there at the factory. This is the mold room. This is where they make molds. Basically, what a mold is, it's just a big hunk of metal. It can be aluminum or steel. that they basically carve out hollows in that we then squirt liquid plastic into, and then that cools and that becomes our parts. And you'll notice the big overhead crane in there. The molds are quite heavy because the plastic is injected at a lot of PSI. And so consequently, they move molds around in there, and the mold making to me is fascinating, how you can take the 3D drawings and then cut the steel out of them. And then they polish all the internal surfaces. They actually have to polish them so there's no mold marks or mill marks, because the cutting tools that they cut into the steel or aluminum with, they leave little circular patterns, and they polish all those out by hand, literally. So it's quite amazing. So it's interesting. The gal there in the middle, not my wife Cynthia with the logo on her shirt, but the gal, the shortest gal there. You'd think she's 15 years old. She's actually 34. And so, I mean, she literally looks and sounds like she's 15, but she's brilliant. So it's amazing. Another view of the factory floor. They'll build everything in sections. Like they'll build if you're doing locomotives, they'll build the locomotive mechanism in a separate place from trucks, separate from the bodies and things like that. And they go into those blue bins, and those blue bins get transported between different assembly areas. So there's always a whole bunch of projects going on at any time. And you'll notice again, the lighting is absolutely incredible in those locations. I mean, they're really well lit.
So then, Stephen, I assume these places service different companies. Mm-hmm. They just change out their mold lines and all that kind of stuff and reset for whatever manufacturer.
Yeah, and depending on how busy the factory is and how large the factory is, there may be 15 or 20 models being built simultaneously.
Wow.
Okay. When I go tour the factory, they try to hide the other manufacturers from me, and right. But I'm because I work for MR and I know just about every product that's made out there by its appearance. You can set 8 locomotives in front of me and I can tell you exactly who manufactured them. So I know what's going on in the industry and the hobby, and I can look in the factory and I can say, I know whose that is and whose this is and whose that is. And,
right.
So, but as for plagiarizing or pillaging any information, that doesn't happen because I have my own things I'm doing. Other people have their own things we're doing. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff to do.
Well, I think it kind of emphasizes your point of you get a run and then they reconfigure the factory for somebody else's run.
Yeah.
And
sometimes within an hour, a line will shut down and it fires right back up an hour later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny to me because even if you wanted to engage in acts of espionage, by the time they're at the factory, it's too late anyway because it's going to ship soon. So
it would be pointless. I mean, there's no worry about that. There's none at all. Because it's too complex to quickly reproduce. It's not like taking a test where you're looking off your neighbor's sheet.
Well, and the thing is, all it would be is, they're making a Jeep 40X, and you're making a Jeep 40. So you aren't going to make a left-hand turn all of a sudden and change things out.
Exactly.
You're making models of standard commodities. Yeah. Is there anything that revolutionary that you would make that somebody go, ooh, I wish I'd done that?
Well, there are some things, and if you look over the last few years, there have been some pretty amazing leaps and bounds made, primarily with headlights and sound.
Okay.
I mean that's really been, and then basically the finite nature of details such as handrails and grab irons and things. But you even then, if you bring out something that makes a major leap, competition between companies is really good. It's what drives the market and what keeps our prices down. And so consequently, why I don't want people to get the technologies I have, there's a possibility that anything you'd come up with would at some point be mimicked by other companies.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything about like handrails and not having them warp or pop out of shells and that kind of thing?
Well, there's different ways to approach that, and there are different manufacturers that approach that different ways, and that's all I'm going to say, because there are different plastic types, and there are different, you can solder handrails, you can do a lot of different things.
Right.
Yeah. So Sparky had an interesting question there about how much would it cost to manufacture the same models in the USA, And we're asked that quite frequently, obviously, because I'll tell you, first of all, I'd love to manufacture in the USA. The language barrier alone would drive me to that. But the thing is, we don't have any model railroad factories in the USA, except for a couple of privately owned ones. And there's at least one company that still makes the majority of their product in the US, and maybe a couple. But they're very well established, and they paid off their buildings and things years and years and years ago. The thing that you need to understand about model manufacturing in China is primarily that these factories have tons of subcontractors. A lot of these factories, they buy their motors from other people. They buy their Zamac cast frames from other people. China, because they're a manufacturing giant, a lot of things, it's like building a house. Your home builder has tons of subcontractors that do major components. If you had a home builder that had to make their own furnaces and had to make their own refrigerators and sinks, you wouldn't get very far. The challenge with us here in the United States is we don't really have the infrastructure where you have somebody that just that will bend wire for you, that will do the types of castings and mixing the quantities of paint and things like that. It's just really, really challenging. And China is, because they're the world's manufacturer, is really set up to do that. So currently they're still cost effective like this, and they're really good at what they do. And so there's probably, from what I know, there's at least 16 factories in China that just manufacture model trains, and that is basically what they sell. They have a factory or a model railroad factory, come build stuff with us. So anyway, we'll move on from there. So talking about that, here's a bunch of parts that have come in from a subcontractor. These are all Zamac castings, obviously a bolster and a coupler housing and then some weight. So they'll get bins and bins of stuff like this that come in from external subcontractors that constantly that do that type of work. Here's brake system parts. I mean, they even get stuff like this from subcontractors. Where you have plastic parts being molded onto wires, injection molded onto wire, generally a plastic called POM. And so these come as sub-assemblies as well, that are then added to freight cars or locomotives, depending on what they are. There's my buddy Mike. This is a run of our GSC flat cars. They've obviously at this point they've injected the bodies. And Mike has in his hands what we used to call a model kit back when we used to build model cars. He's got the bodies in the gray plastic ready to be assembled. And all the racks you see behind him are full of these cars. It's amazing, how much space several thousand cars take up. So that's these factories are generally pretty enormous and have a lot of racks in them to store stuff like this. And these will be going to assembly, and then they'll be painted after assembly. Here they are getting ready to go into paint. You notice they're kind of stuck down with double-sided tape onto these kind of mesh grates, and that's what that'll go into the paint shop in that shape. They'll paint the bottom side and the sides, and then they'll flip them over and do the other sides at a different date. And anyone that's ever built models knows how that goes. You paint sides separately.
Are they using machines for that too, or is that like it runs through a machine, or is someone hand painting those?
No, they're pretty much hand painted, and a lot of them have very, very high tech clean rooms where it's just like going into an electronic assembly facility where you've got double doors and you get air blown over you, and there's sticky surfaces to pull everything off your shoes, and you wear a hairnet, and so there's a lot of that goes on. I mean, their paint booths. I can't even imagine what their paint booth rooms cost.
So my German Shepherd would not be welcome in their paint.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I've ended up with more furry models.
Yeah. Now here's some paint booths here. These are just painting things like wheel sets and trucks and things like that. So this is not a clean room. This is just a general painting area, and you'll notice the bins going through the different paint, and they've got paint booths there where they're just basically airbrushing. This is an entire room full of airbrush booths that they're painting, and then you'll notice the lights, the really high quality industrial lighting over each of the paint booths. Being able to inspect is very important. Anybody can anybody guess what's going on here?
I can't tell what those things are. Those wheels?
Those are axles and wheels. He's pressing wheels onto axles.
Oh, wow.
his left hand is in a bin full of metal axles, and he has wheel sets on the other side, and he's pushing them together and putting them in gauge at that workstation. So he'll sit there and make 1,000 wheel sets. I don't know how many, probably 1,000 a day, sitting there.
I saw a similar process to this at the Microtrains factory last summer when we were there, where they were putting trip pins in.
Yeah, and you make fixtures for everything.
Yeah.
So you can produce, and so you've got a whole group of fixtures that you make for any particular thing.
So I'm curious, the injection molding happens at a certain rate. Does it ever like overrun the assembly lines at all?
Well, factories experience delays, and sometimes the factories have to go back and redo things. You may have thought the plastic was only going to shrink, 3%, and it shrank 5% or what. There's a lot of variables in what they do. So, but they generally build in some extra time to things. This is why you'll often see delays in projects. Like, man, we want to have this out in January, but it comes out in March.
Right.
Because something's happened and they've just gone back and redone it. And, that's just part of the process of bringing out decent models. And every model manufacturer out there will have challenges with this, or they mixed the wrong color and sprayed the wrong color on models. That's happened to some of our competitors. It's just when you're manufacturing things that are this complex, it's just part of it is going to get in there. And there'll be challenges.
Then you have the people complaining, "Oh, it was a week late." The same people complain about the price. Oh, sorry.
But you know what? I actually like those complaints because it gets attention for you, and even bad attention is good attention. And we work as hard as we can and to address all the challenges, but there are always a lot of unknowns. And it's amazing that as complex as this stuff is, anything even gets done. I mean, it really is. Literally, it's amazing anything gets done. Here's the case in point. This gentleman is soldering leads onto light emitting diode boards. And look at that, Seth. You've done some of this work. Can you imagine doing that all day long?
Oh my God, Steve.
He doesn't even want to do one of those things.
Now, I will tell you that a lot of the times in the factories, they will not do one job all day. There's a lot of cycling. So you may do this for an hour and then they move on to something else for an hour. So you have a round robin kind of rotation between these tasks, because they are absolutely, the burnout is a human condition, and they do a lot of things to protect their workers from that. So, which is interesting. So anyway, here we go. This is, if you look at this, this is journal caps for a rotating bearings on a truck. And what you're looking at here is you're looking at a brass anode that will be have electricity put into it, and that will literally be burned into a steel mold. So instead of tooling this, what they do is they will make soft copper anodes. So because copper is very, very easy to mill and machine, and they will basically make the anode, and then they'll hook it into electricity, and they'll just lightly touch this against the hardened steel mold, and it will burn that shape into the mold. And so you're making molds not with tools and bits, but with electricity.
Huh.
It's interesting.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Cut levers, anybody? That is a whole bin of cut levers.
And that's a detail part that a lot of people really just don't go for.
Yeah,
And there they are.
And if you look, those are two colored. They have two colors of paint on them.
Oh my God.
It kind of looks like ramen noodles or something. It kind of makes me hungry.
So someone else just said exactly that. It says ramen noodles in the comments there.
Seth, you have any idea what this is?
Speakers.
Yep. These are sugar cube or cell phone speakers. We source a lot of our parts, like the speakers we're using in our locomotives. We went to a lot of subcontractors and had them send us product, and we tested them. So the factory did not do the specifications on this. We did the specifications, and then we negotiated the price that our factory will purchase those for. And a lot of companies don't do that. That's part of our way of keeping costs down, is sourcing materials ourselves with various Chinese companies for our major contractor to work with. So, and plus that way we can control the quality and get speakers that are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on about tariffs. Let me address this since people are interested in this. The first thing is we don't know what will happen with the tariffs. Most of the tariffs that have been in place, and there are tariffs from all countries. I'll tell you that right. There's just tariffs everywhere. It's a way countries, and not just the U.S., but a lot of countries protect themselves. I'll put protect in parentheses from protect their large businesses and industries from countries that can do things cheaper. Normally, tariffs will affect items of $10 million or over, like steel industry or the automotive industry. We have, as of yet, not really felt any serious effects of tariffs yet. That may happen. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but I don't. I don't have a crystal ball. So we'll see what happens with that. I will say that a lot of the industries, model railroad production industries, have moved from different companies. You'll remember a number of years ago, a lot of model railroad stuff, especially brass, was made in South Korea. They're now out of the price range. Even Japan, at one time, a lot of model railroad stuff was produced in Japan. So the factories move around over time. And if China, for whatever reason, becomes gets to the place where it's no longer economical, there are other countries to manufacture in. There are a lot of other countries that are beginning to get industrial bases. India, Vietnam, Thailand. There are other countries, and I do know. I will tell you that there are a couple United States manufacturers that have produced models in other countries now besides China. So economies grow up, they grow out of things, people's standards of living increase, and that's what we want to have happen. We want everybody in the world to have a fantastic wages and to eventually move into really good lifestyles. I'm not trying to retard that in any way, not like I have the power to do that, but we take advantage of lower cost manufacturing, and when it gets to the point that that manufacturing cost gets higher, in order to keep good prices for all of our constituents, that is you people that buy models, we will look elsewhere to source factories. So, okay, I'm going to move on from there. We were talking about the copper electrodes. So this is the electrode process right here. You see the copper anode, the electrode sitting above the steel. And there's water there, which acts as a conductor and a coolant. And so that basically that piece of copper there has a design on it, and it is being through electrolysis, EDPM. It's being burned into the tooling there, which you see. If you look at the tooling, you can see the sprue there. You can see all the jets and all the places where the plastic will flow through into the actual parts. So it takes a lot of those electrodes to make a single tool. The nice thing about using that type of tooling is you can get much finer parts, because the tooling can tool things that are considerably smaller than a spinning bit can tool.
So how is the copper bit made?
Those are tooled, and the reason they're tooled is it's much softer than the hard steel.
Okay.
You can inject, you could inject into copper, but you have a very limited amount of injections you could do in copper.
Right.
So we work in copper with the master, we burn it onto the hard steel, and then the hard steel has a much higher
replication rate.
Yeah, it'll do thousands and thousands and thousands of models.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So
single model will have hundreds of these.
Who gets to keep the copper then, or the steel even for that?
Well,
matter?
no, we keep the copper, because if you break the mold, what'll happen sometimes if the plastic doesn't get injected out of the mold and somehow it sticks in there and the mold closes up, you can break the mold.
Huh.
Because it's really high pressure and the pieces fit together, because you're injecting stuff in there at enormous PSIs. So the mold slams shut and it's really held shut. You generally don't break the whole mold in half, but you'll break a detail, in the mold.
Right.
And how do you turn around and make another mold in a day or so? Well, right there's your answer. You keep the anodes.
So then, do you keep the copper forevermore, or is it only for your run?
I've actually never asked that question. Generally, if you want to stay in the business, you're going to do multiple runs.
Right.
So
You
yeah,
would hope.
yeah.
I
So
have a question too, Steve, that's maybe related. Well, it is related, and it's might be kind of nerdy actually, but
well, I would expect no less from you. So
yeah. Well, I'm expecting a nerdy answer too. So just so
you'll
we're
get it.
clear
You'll
about that.
definitely get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, and I don't remember where I'm getting this idea from, but I'm getting this idea, and I don't usually make stuff up like this, so I must have heard it somewhere,
Or your AI.
or I might be AI. Yeah. But the question is, all that stuff is overseas,
Mm-hmm.
but Class 1 owns it.
Yep.
What happens? Like, can you call them and say, "Hey, we want our stuff. Send it to us," and
Yeah.
they have to send it to you?
Definitely. All of this stuff we've paid for, and it has our name on it.
Okay.
And I'll tell you right now, we have had product that we have moved from one factory to another.
Oh.
And literally within China. I mean, one factory will go over and pick up all your molds and all your stuff at one factory and move it to a different factory.
Uh-huh.
And that's partially due to pricing, if you can get a better price, but mainly it's due to quality. We had a factory that we were less than thrilled with their quality and their turnaround time. And so we went and picked our tooling up and moved it to another factory. So, there have been instances of factories going out of business, and in days of old, that was kind of a shatter to a lot of the confidence of manufacturers. So pretty much now, when you go into negotiation and agreement with a company, you make sure that your name's on all of your tooling and you know where it's at. And the agreement with the company is, if something happens to you, we're gonna get that stuff out of your factory.
You get your IP basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's an important protection, I think, to be able to do that. But I would have some. I'd be skeptical, right, of my confidence that it could happen because they're overseas. I know that there's a lot of talk about China not being, just as I can't say in the model building industry, but just as a general comment, that they don't really respect IP the same, and because all the pirated bootleg stuff comes from there.
Yeah, but the majority of factories, that's not a worry.
Yeah,
cool.
It's like here. I mean, do we feel safe on the straight? Most people are fantastic, and they'd help you in any way they can. There's always a minority, and you always hear about the minority incidents. Most people are great people. I love our factory owners. They're fantastic. In fact, they come over and stay with us in January for the Amherst show. We've got some of our factory owners coming over. They're going to stay with us in our home.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have, at the end of the day, people are people, even if they live in different countries.
Yep.
I'm sure there is some intellectual property theft, but you know what? Our hobby is not large enough for anybody to be able to leverage that and make anything out of it.
Yeah.
It's just not. And the other thing is, one of the most important things that we own is the CAD drawings to all of this. So let's just say if a factory would burn down or something would happen to it, an earthquake or whatever, and we lose some of our tooling. Our tooling is not handmade by skilled craftsmen anymore. It's a computer program. You toss a block of metal in a CNC machine, and or the EDPM machine, and you can reproduce those molds relatively easy and relatively inexpensively.
Cool.
So
yeah, the real work behind it is all the design, right?
The design and the research and the creation. So
if you have all the originals, I see what you're saying. I never thought of it that way. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, correct. Okay, let's continue. Here's a mold. They're very, very heavy. A lot of the times they're heated as well. They pipe hot water through them. So you get so the cavities in the mold, things are really hot, so your plastic flows. Obviously, a big old thick piece of metal like that's going to act like a heat sink when you start squirting plastic into it. So the molds actually heat the molds, so it helps the plastic inject through the mold. And and you'll notice there's a serial number on the side of that. See that serial number? That's a factory ownership number. I don't know who owns that mold, but it could be Atlas or who knows? It could be Tangent, could be Des Plaines. I don't know who the mold number is because I don't know whose mold that is, but it was sitting there when we photographed. Those things are incredibly heavy, by the way. Unbelievable.
Well, they're almost solid metal, right? So
yeah. Well, they're hollow, but they are fairly solid. Yes, because they have chambers in them for heating, and then chambers in them for injecting plastic. But there's still an awful lot of metal there. Don't drop it on your foot or your head. So there's Brad, our CFO. That's one of the cars we produced. He's in the paint shop at one of our factories, and that's a car that just had been completed off the assembly, off the pad printing. And that's an amazing thing watching them add the graphics to cars. It's really, really incredible. Here's a couple factory owners, and then me and Mike. You notice that no stereotype, typical disrespect, mate, but Chinese people are fairly short. You notice me and Mike, we're 1.5 feet taller than most of them are, and so we're hunched down here. We're going out for lunch, and with the group, fun people, absolutely fun people.
I like to think of it as they have better posture than you do.
Actually, that's my back hurting from moving those molds around.
Yeah, why are you and Mike such hunchbacks in this?
Yeah, because they made us move our molds around. So anyway, that's it with the show. And,
all right.
I'm going to upload a video to you if I can, if I remember to do that, because I want you to see the method of doing the electrostatic discharge milling tooling, which is really amazing. So I have a little video of that that will run here in a second. Let me know when that's finished uploading.
Yeah, it's ready for us.
Right,
just when I bring it up, it'll play automatically. So here we go. You ready?
Yeah. And this is the machine touching the electrode to the steel. And the water, of course, is cooling it. And you can play it again if you want. You'll see a little steam comes off it now and then. And there's actually electrical sparks underneath there. It's actually burning the image into the steel.
So keep stamping that until it's all the way to that.
Yeah, and it doesn't take long. It only takes 5-10 minutes, and you've got the image burned into the hard steel.
For some reason, I have to go to the bathroom suddenly.
So it's quite amazing. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the manufacturing process. It's the rest of the stuff. I've got a few pictures of or other things. A lot of people ask about how the printing is done, and it's basically printed kind of like a stamping process. And I'll upload a video of that here as well too, because I have that. And I kind of talk about the what they use to print. They use an etched plate, and on that etched plate, they squeegee ink into the etchings on the plate, and then they pick it up.
I'm sorry, Steve. I forgot there was narration on this one.
No, that's fine. They pick up the image with this gelatinous material, and then it's stamped onto the side of the car, and the gelatinous material will actually go around ribs and imperfections in the side of the car. So go ahead and play the video, and I'll shut up here.
So we're in the factory, and we're here in the pad printing area, and what pad printing basically is basically a really soft gelatinous membrane. And what they do is they touch this down onto an etched sheet. It picks up paint, and then that paint is then transferred to the model by this gelatinous surface. The nice thing about the gelatinous surface, which of course there's many shapes of, is the fact that it'll transfer the ink that it's picking up or the paint that it's picking up around rivets, around ribs, and things like that, so you can get really good sharp paint in a variety of ways.
And I can testify to this because I've seen a lot of models come across my bench over the years doing these spotlights, and the kindest of, or the level of fine, I'm going to call it detail. That's not what it is. It's fine rendering, really. Mm. I mean, I can get my most magnified visor on my visor, and you can read stuff that looks like a dot. My eyes are getting bad, but
the end scale stuff was what amazes me. You
Yeah.
know, and even Z scale. I haven't been exposed to a lot, having my hands on a lot of Z scale stuff. But when I was editor of RMC, you know, we had a lot of models come in for review and to write reviews about. And so I looked at an awful lot of stuff, and the N scale stuff just absolutely blows me away. You know, and a lot of the N scale companies, you know, microtrains and a lot. It's amazing stuff. What a neat time to be in the hobby.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Certainly nothing like what it used to be, where you'd see dots on the model and then you magnify it and it's dots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's amazing.
There's a question now. I know that there's more, and I don't want to skip over anything because this is all very fascinating to me. But people are also rolling around comments in the chat about upcoming products that you've talked about but haven't really said anything about.
Sure.
Look, he did it on purpose. Look at that smile.
You know, I mean, we could be here all night, and I wouldn't mind it. But my wife would be calling me again for proof of life. Hey, are you still alive?
Well, I mean, she's not watching. Doesn't she know how important this
she can
channel
come in
is?
and talk with us too. It'd be all good.
You have to understand, you know, too much of anything, and she has to live with me all the time. So I'm sure she enjoys the break.
We can send her a condolence card if you like.
Well, anyway, N scale. So are we going to make N scale? I would imagine at some point we will. You know, the phrase "walk before you run" is key. You know, we're a startup. We're well 4 years into it now. We're coming up on 5, and things are going really well. I would not be surprised if we don't venture into some N scale before long. You know, we definitely don't have problems with any scale. It's not like it's a scale snob robbery thing or anything. It's just the fact that you start with what you know and what you're used to working with and what you've honed your skills with, and then as you get better, you accept different challenges. So I wouldn't doubt that. Somebody earlier also asked about a locomotive. Yes, we have a locomotive coming out. We actually have 3 of them coming out, but I'm not going to say what they are. But we have a very heavy production schedule. So there we go.
Okay, is there another video or?
No, there's no more. I mean, there's some. I could do that to you all night too, but there's nothing there that's stellar.
Okay, yeah. I didn't want to cut it off. There were a lot of comments about that, and I don't know if anybody said what they thought it was. But I thought, hasn't one been announced publicly though? I thought at a train show.
Yeah, we've announced our GP40. We announced our GP40 like 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's coming along well. It is not ethereal. It is a real thing. It may seem like it's ethereal at this point, but it is a real thing, and it's going to be a neat model.
What road names?
What's that?
What road names, if I can ask?
Let's see. I don't know if I can, off the top of my head, recite them. There's going to be 8 separate road names. I know Rock Island's one of them. Rio Grande. Oh gosh, Burlington Northern.
Okay.
My word, my brain is failing me. I don't remember off the top of my head. I deal with too much of this stuff, and there's too many projects. It's a big blur. So, yeah, we had those announcements at a couple of trade shows.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone watching this, maybe not right now, but this is available on replay, and people will be able to. It'll have a couple or a few thousand views probably by the end of next week. But someone's going to be watching, going, "Oh, are they going to do a steam locomotive?" Because that's always something that people ask. Are they going to do a steam locomotive? Any plans for that, or is it?
Well, steam locomotives are an additional challenge because all the ones that were done in mass, in other words, the USRA things and a lot of things, have been produced, and there are some very good steam locomotive producers out there right now that are making beautiful models. I would not say no to that. It would require a shift in our direction, especially we would need to bring somebody on board, or we would need somebody that would consult that knows steam locomotives. As you know, there's been a considerable amount of time that's passed, since the prototypes were produced. We have a lot of information on steam locomotives. I've got a lot of drawings and a lot of that stuff, but at this point, we have no plans on doing these steam locomotives. That could always change.
Oh, probably just the last
Second
one,
to
kind of a
last.
fun
Second
one.
to last.
Second one,
Structures.
structures. Any plans to do structures, vehicles, other railroad infrastructure?
So, without really talking about running a company, if you think about the normal cycle of model railroading, in other words, you get somebody and they're just starting, they really require a locomotive, some type of a power pack or command and control system, and track work, and then freight cars. So there's a law of hierarchy built into that. And that is, as you get further and further away from that, your sales diminish. In other words, when you start going into specific depots for specific railroads, there's less market there. So you start with the high end. And so we've started with the high end. Will I say we will never make structures or track? No, not at all. There's a huge market there for everything, but we're hitting the highest needs first, because as a startup company, that is what people have to have to model railroad. Literally, you have to have a locomotive, freight cars, and track. So
Well,
that is the beginning point.
yeah, what kind of drove that was, as you know, John and I have reviewed some of the loads you guys have done, and they're fantastic. And it's not much of a leap to go from that to certain trackside structures,
Sure.
things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, clearly you've done in my opinion, an amazing marketing job of coordinating these very cool loads with unique cars that would use them. And, I mean, I love it. I've got your stuff on my layout. I know several people who do, because it looks so good. So, clearly you have the ability to do it. You have your, the lady with the sugar molds. So you know how to make it. And obviously with that technology, you don't need huge runs to be economical. That's why we asked the question.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really want to say about this hobby is, a lot of people say, you've got competitors. See, I don't ever look at any of this as competing. It's adding. This is an additive hobby, not a competitive hobby.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
there are companies out there that just make structures. They make laser kit structures, that they make acrylic cut structures, or they make plastic injection. So a lot of that stuff's available. I don't feel an enormous rush at this point to try to go out and be everything to everyone, because I think that when you do that, it causes some unneeded challenges, frankly. And there are companies out there that do that really, really well. And so I'm not saying we'll never do that. Oh, sure. I think, at some point we may bring out a couple structures or whatever. I've done a lot of structure design. I did a lot of stuff for Walthers. And if you remember a number of years back, Athearn brought out some structures. They brought out some Santa Fe depots. I did all the design work on all that. That's when George Riley was there. And we did, like a couple depots and just a whole bunch of stuff. So we can definitely do that. It's within our wheelhouse. It's what our highest and best use is. What are we going to concentrate on at this time? So again, we to make it as a startup company, you want to produce the stuff that most people have to have up front. So there's a method to the madness, Seth.
Absolutely.
I understand that, but if you look at a lot of the structure kits, the relatively easy to get into structure kits, not the craftsman ones, which are usually some East Coast over by a wharf, blah blah blah, wood shit going. Sorry, what's going on? Or the standard Helgen stuff that's been imported from Europe that is now on molds that I think the molds themselves are warping, as near as I can tell.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have something that's not quite craftsman that you can kind of stick together in a couple evenings and have a decent looking structure without like sizable clamps trying to keep the damn thing straight.
Yeah. And I won't argue that with you at all. It's just we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're walking before we run. And believe me, as a modeler and as a fairly well-rounded modeler, and I don't mean I'm fat. I mean, good modelers learn that you balance all the way across everything. You go buy some freight cars, and at the same time you're buying ground foam, because both of those things are a necessary part of your railroad.
Right.
And as a balanced model railroad, that balance is incredibly important. And so I realize that those things are all out there and all needed.
This almost sounds like you need to write a book, The Zen of Model Railroading, or something like that.
By the way, he said shed.
Oh, that's right.
Shed.
Sorry. Yeah.
Shed. Yeah.
That
All
too.
right, what else we got?
I don't know. We haven't seen a lot of questions in the comment section here. There was an interesting comment. I thought I didn't bring it up because we were talking about something else, but Giuseppe says that people are 3D printing their own stuff. So, and I think he makes a really good point that you also don't need to, or probably don't want to, invest a lot of time and resources into tooling for something that somebody could just print if they need it. 3D print. So
yeah, I mean, the world is changing. I mentioned earlier that we used to be big publishers. That market. We went from doing 9,000 books to 5,000 to 3,000, and when we got down around 1,500, it's like, we're doing this as a hobby at this point. And the same is true with a lot of things. But you'll also find that again, we'll go back to the Menards freight car thing. You have a lot of people that have greatly varying interests and greatly varying incomes and greatly varying skill levels. You're always going to have people that will buy ready to run. You're always going to have people that will scratch build, and you're always going to have people that are going to buy kits. So really all three of those genre of modelers exist, and none of them is right or wrong. They're just different.
Oh, yeah.
You have people that have exorbitant amounts of money, but not a lot of time. I have a very good friend here in town that's a heart surgeon, a cardiac surgeon. And, he will buy everything he can buy assembled, and price is not a concern of his. He's probably never going to sit down, buy a 3D printer, and then spend all the hours and hours it takes to learn CAD programs to draw stuff that, nothing wrong with him. You got another guy who loves sitting at a computer, and he's going to sit and learn CAD programs, and he's going to buy 3D printers, and he's going to print all day long. That's what makes the hobby so cool, is all of these things. And I love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm amazed by everybody. All those skill levels, we create such different, amazing things. It blows me away.
Yeah. One of the cool things I think about the hobby is that there are so many different ways to enjoy it. And that's what they say. As long as you're having fun, you're doing it right. So,
we talked about this real early on. There's not that we can pigeonhole everybody into things, but there's basically consumers and producers. And we all spend a certain amount of our time consuming, and we all spend a part of our time producing. So you have a consuming and a producing sides. And when I raised my son, it's funny, I used to ask him every day, "Hey, Joel, are you producing or consuming today?" And, "Oh, Dad," how kids are. The point was not to badger him. The point was in his brain to get him thinking about what his activities were. Am I just consuming, or am I producing as well? And, but when you get to a hobby, there are certain people like my cardiac surgeon, he has limited time to produce. So in the hobby world, he's doing big time producing in the operating room, but in his hobby world, he's doing a lot of consuming. So he's buying a lot of that kind of stuff. And when you break it down into the producer consumer model, and most of us have a balance. Most of us can build kits, but sometimes we buy RTR stuff. But other time we have a specific building we want to build, and definitely the project of building a model railroad. Very few of us buy our model railroad. Seth, I know you didn't buy your model railroad. That's something that you produce. So, and it's really interesting to me as we've evolved in the hobby, how the model railroad has changed. It used to be when I was a kid, man, if you had a 4x8, you were set. I mean, that was. And even the large model railroaders, they might have that 4x12, or, a couple of them had a 4x16 or an L shape. Now you've got people that are building enormous railroads. My last railroad was 3,400 square feet. It's just, people are building enormous railroads. which is really cool. And so it shows where you can go. Now, do you have a lot of 4x8ers? Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that, or a lot of Californians that don't have basements that are in clubs or things like that. So the market is just everywhere. And I love the fact that you've got little guys producing 3D structures or laser cut structures. And then you have large companies that are bringing thousands of models in from producers. So I love it. It's a cool thing.
Yeah, there's always the balance of, do you want to spend money or do you want to spend time?
Yeah, and most of us,
Oh.
a lot of people that are money rich are time poor.
Yeah.
Well, but the other thing I think, Murph, is you were just talking about military modelers. So like plastic modelers, they're buying the thing for the 50 hours of entertainment they get in the build.
Yes.
Once they're done with the build, it's where am I going to put this thing so it doesn't just accumulate dust? We at least have something to do with the model when we're done.
That doesn't accumulate dust ever. I've never had to dust off a
Never dust.
railroad car.
No dust.
No, that's natural weathering. That's not.
You don't have dust in Kansas City, Steve.
No, not at all. Nothing. Yeah.
Oh my, sorry.
Well, we're up against the time because we've gone even
What?
more. We've gone
Oh my
even longer
gosh.
than I thought we would.
Yeah,
Which this happens every time.
this is
And
great.
that means it was a good conversation or an interesting topic.
No, and I'll be glad to come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say. I want you to come back, but I have a very specific question that I want you to think about between now and then. So Seth mentioned that Class 1 is really good at releasing accompanying stuff. So like with the TWFs, you had the containers, which were great containers, by the way. And then with the flat cars, we have the custom loads and all that cool stuff that's and they keep coming. I can't believe, like, every time I look, there's another batch of 3 or 4 different loads coming out. So the assignment is I want to see the miniature auto parts that go in the 86-foot auto parts car.
You didn't open the car up. They're already in there.
Oh, I didn't even know the doors open.
The car was originally sent to be $15, but everybody said they wanted the load inside, so we put the load in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to go back and try to peel the roof off or something now because I really want to see those miniature auto parts.
For those of you that don't have a sense of levity, I say that in jest. That is not indeed the case.
Oh, so I don't have to open it. Okay, I feel better now because I was really on that.
I hate to say it, but I was just really intrigued with your idea of basically product managing your last layout. And I really want to hear that story.
Oh.
So I hope that comes soon.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that show. Actually, for Cocoa Beach, for the RPM in Cocoa Beach, I'm going to be presenting a story or a presentation that's going to be So You Want to Build a Model Railroad. And it takes a lot of the psychological side of model railroading, and we're going to talk about that. Why human being A can build a model railroad and human being B never seems to be able to do that. And
right.
And again, it's not an attack on anybody because there's a lot of different factors in there. And I've been studying this for a long time. I've built 16 layouts, 16. The last 2 have been completely signaled with CTC panels. And people, one of the questions that people ask me all the time is, how can you do this? Well, I got to thinking about that. Well, okay, maybe what were the personality traits or the disciplines or whatever that it took? So I spent a lot of time thinking about that. And there's a lot of very skilled modelers in Kansas City that don't have railroads. They work on other people's railroads. And so I have a very good presentation I'm going to be doing at the Cocoa Beach RPM in January on just exactly that, because a lot of it is what goes on up here.
Yep. Yeah. I have a swell idea. Why don't you do that presentation for however many people fit into that room and come back and do it here next time? Because I want to do it too.
We can do, again, we need to sign the standard rich and famous contract. So when we all become rich and famous, I guess.
Rich.
Yeah, he's already rich.
Rich Murphy. Yeah, we just need to work on the famous part.
Well, you're getting famous right now.
Oh, there you go.
He's
There you
YouTube famous.
Yeah. Well, I've loved talking to you guys. We could do this all evening. It's wonderful. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for covering our products. You're a very important keynote portion of companies like mine staying in business. getting the word out, getting the word out that, hey, these people produce things, and you know what? It's okay stuff. That's incredibly important to us, and I thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I like to be able to show stuff in such detail that people can see what they get and they can decide for themselves, so it's all good.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you very much, sir. We definitely appreciate it, and hope that you have a wonderful, and of course, Cynthia, have a wonderful holiday season there, what's left of it. And let's talk again soon.
Yeah.
And
And we've got a lot of presentations. So anytime that you're wanting to talk, we'll be glad to.
yeah, that's awesome. And
So-
I'm trying to, I remember, it does it automatically. Stick around until after the music, Steve, and we'll chat briefly, and then we'll all go and have the rest of our holiday seasons together. Thank you
I'm
so
going to go
much.
have supper. It's 8:15 here. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. I want to thank our moderators in the chat for keeping things on track. See what I did there? And we'll catch everybody else next time. Enjoy the rest of your safe and wonderful holiday season. And we'll see you all next year. Oh, and thanks to you guys for coming to do this.
Always a pleasure.
This is great.
It's asking me